SKOL Vikings, let's win this game.
Vikings fans, the last few hours have been all about major roster decisions. There's talk of a trade that could shake the core of this team. There's a possible signing to fill a key gap on the roster. And now an NFL analyst is saying Kyler Murray is way better than J.J. McCarthy. That has already sparked serious tension behind the scenes in Minnesota. And here's the kicker. By the end, there's a story where the Vikings are being warned to avoid a wide receiver prospect in the draft. That part could change how this offense is built moving forward. Let's get into it. So let's start with a move that maybe a lot of people didn't expect, but makes a lot of sense when you look at the full picture on defense. The Vikings are clearly targeting a signing to reinforce the interior defensive line, and it's not an exaggeration to say this has become a priority after recent departures. Let's be real here. Two players who handled a ton of snaps are gone. A lot. And you don't replace that just by hoping or throwing everything on young players. That's where teams get exposed early in the season. Sure, there's a guy who broke out last season and deserves more opportunities. That's true, but overloading him right now could be a risky move. That's where a name from a division rival starts gaining traction, and that alone should make you pay attention. Yeah, that type of player who doesn't put up flashy stats but is always there, doing the dirty work, stopping the run, getting pressure when needed. That veteran you don't highlight in fantasy football, but coaches love having on the roster. And in games decided in the trenches, that matters more than people think. And that name gaining real traction right now is DJ Reader. To be completely honest with you, this is exactly the type of player this team needs right now. Not a superstar, not a headline, just consistency. And after what we saw last season, that matters a lot. Some people will look at his age and hesitate. Fair enough. But let's be honest, experience matters too, especially for a defense trying to reset after major changes. And there's another point that not enough people talk about. This roster needs balance. You can't rely only on youth in such physical positions. That usually shows up late in games. Having a veteran who handles first downs, takes on blocks, and frees up teammates changes how the entire defense operates. That's the kind of thing you notice if you really follow this team closely. It's not just numbers, it's fit, context, and real on-field need. Now, I want to hear from you. Would you bring in this type of player or roll with the young guys? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because if this move happens, it could define the level of this defense right out of the gate. And that leads right into the next situation, which starts to impact the other side of the ball. Now pay attention to this, because this story starts as a curiosity, but it could turn into a major decision down the road, and it might happen faster than people expect. A new name has emerged on offense that, until recently, almost nobody was talking about. And suddenly, he's gaining traction in conversations, visits, and evaluations. That kind of rise usually means something is happening behind the scenes, and this isn't just empty hype. The profile is legit. Unusual size, solid speed for that frame, and a style that fits perfectly as a boundary receiver. The kind who stretches the field and wins physical matchups. That kind of player changes how the whole offense operates. It forces defenses to adjust. What's even more interesting is his journey. He didn't come from a powerhouse program. He didn't have the spotlight. And still, he produced, even on a team that struggled against stronger competition. That matters because it shows he doesn't need a perfect situation to stand out. But here's where things get tricky. The level of competition. That question always comes up. Yeah, but he didn't face top defenses. That's fair. But when you watch the tape, when you see how he moves, how he creates separation, it's hard to ignore. And that's where teams start to gamble. And this rising name the Vikings are evaluating is Ted Hurst. To be completely honest with you, this is the type of prospect who either turns into a huge hit or just doesn't translate to the NFL at all. There's no middle ground, and that's what makes the decision so tough, because the Vikings already have top-end talent at the position. No debate there. But after that, depth becomes an issue. And that becomes a problem over a full season. There's a need for someone who can step in and contribute consistently, and a player with this profile starts to make sense. But there's a key detail. This draft class is loaded with wide receivers. Loaded. And many of them are safer, more proven, more polished. So the question becomes, do you go with raw potential or with reliability? That decision can shape the offense for years. And some analysts are already saying that if this player came from a major program, he'd be a clear first-round pick. That's a big deal. That changes how people see him. Simple as that. At the same time, we've seen this before. Athletic prospects who never quite make it at the pro level. The risk is right there. But I'll tell you this. When a team brings a player in for an official visit, it's not just curiosity. There's real interest. Real evaluation. A plan is being built. And that's where things flip a bit. Because depending on how the draft board moves, this name could rise quickly. And then it becomes that classic situation. Either you take him early or you lose him. and those decisions define drafts. Stay with me because this conversation about offense leads straight into the next story, and this one shifts everything at the most important position on the field. But before we go further, quick ask. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. It's free and it really helps grow this community. It also keeps you plugged into every move like this as it develops. Let's keep going. Now this one turned into a heated debate. The kind that splits bar conversations, group chats, and every circle of fans, and honestly, it's the kind of take that sticks with you. A national analyst made a comparison that honestly hits right at the confidence level in one of the most sensitive areas of this team. The statement was direct, no hesitation, putting a veteran quarterback clearly above the young player still developing on the roster, and not in a maybe way, more like there's no debate. And yeah, that hits. It hits hard. Because one comment like that can shift how people view the entire quarterback room. Because it's one thing for us, internally, to talk about development, patience, and growth. It's another thing when someone from outside looks in and says, the gap is that big. That changes perception. It changes how the team is viewed across the league. And it can even impact expectations moving forward. To be completely honest with you, I understand the argument. Kyler Murray has proven himself in the NFL. He's produced, he's carried teams, he's performed even in unstable situations. That matters. That's real value. But at the same time, you invested in a young quarterback. You believed in him. You built a future around that idea. And that young quarterback is J.J. McCarthy. So you can't just ignore it like it never happened. And that's where the real question comes in. Timing. This roster looks more ready now. There's talent across the board. There are pieces working, and the defense showed real strength at key moments. So how long can you wait for development? How patient can you afford to be? Because if the team believes it can compete right now, the pressure changes fast. And once that window opens, decisions come quicker. And there's another detail people are overlooking. System fit. The offense has a defined identity. Under center looks, heavy play action, structured reads. And Kyler Murray comes from a different style. So it's not automatic. It's not plug and play. That's where it gets tricky. But there's a positive angle. The coaching staff has shown flexibility. They've adapted before. They've adjusted systems to different players. And that at least gives you a path. In the end, this isn't just about who is better today. It's about what this team wants to be this season and how fast they want to get there. And this is the kind of breakdown you only get from people who live and breathe Vikings football. So let me ask you, would you go with experience now or stay committed to the future? I want your take, because this decision touches everything, and it leads directly into the next story, which involves a possible trade that could seriously impact the defense. Now, we get into something that starts to feel a little uncomfortable, because it involves a potential trade of a player who, whether you like it or not, has become an important piece of this defense. And when these kinds of rumors pick up right before the draft, it's usually not random. It usually means something is being discussed behind closed doors. Here's what's really going on. Teams around the league are watching this closely and could make a move, and not just any offer. We're talking about meaningful draft picks, the kind that help build a roster in the medium term, the kind that can reshape depth and future flexibility. But here comes the classic dilemma. Do you move a productive player now to gain draft capital, or do you keep him and maintain defensive stability? That's not a simple call, because let's be real, pressuring the opposing quarterback isn't a luxury, it's essential. And this player brings that. Even when sack numbers aren't huge, his presence is felt. He forces mistakes. He collapses the pocket. He creates opportunities for others. And that kind of impact doesn't always show up on the stat sheet. To be completely honest with you, players like this aren't easy to replace. You don't just draft someone and expect immediate impact. There's a learning curve. There's experience. There's physical readiness for the NFL. But you also can't ignore the bigger picture. The contract matters. The team's timeline matters. And there are younger players coming in, pushing for more snaps. That changes the equation. It forces tough decisions. Because if the coaching staff believes someone is ready to take on a bigger role, then the trade conversation starts to make sense, especially if the compensation is strong. And that player right in the middle of these discussions is Jonathan Greenard. But here's the key factor, the one that separates a smart move from a costly mistake: return value. If the offer isn't strong, forget it. It doesn't make sense to move a pass rusher of this level for less. That weakens the team now and guarantees nothing later. And from what's being said, the team isn't looking to settle. They want a high return, something that truly makes it worth it. And honestly, that's how it should be. If he's moved, it needs to be for something significant. Otherwise, keep him and maintain a strong defense. And keep in mind, more than one team is watching this situation. This could turn into a bidding scenario. And when that happens, the price goes up. And things can move quickly. So there's that tension. It could happen at any moment, or nothing might happen at all. But one thing is clear. This decision could reshape the defense immediately. And that sets up the next story, one that goes beyond the field and touches something much deeper inside this franchise. Now, this one changes the tone completely. It steps away from schemes, signings, and trades, and goes straight into the human side of the game. And when it involves someone who made history with this franchise, you feel it. You really feel it. A former Vikings wide receiver, Adam Thielen, has decided to retire. And sure, that's part of the cycle. Every career reaches that point. But what stood out was how he explained that decision. That's where it hits differently. It wasn't about not being able to play. It wasn't about a major injury. It was about how he started to be seen within the organization. He made it clear that at a certain point, he realized he was no longer viewed the same way. Even though he believed he could still perform, even though he felt capable, the perception had changed. And that hits hard, because anyone who lives and breathes Vikings football understands what a player like Adam Thielen represents. It's not just stats, it's not just numbers. It's history, identity, connection with the fan base in purple and gold. To be completely honest with you, hearing that is uncomfortable. It shows how cold the NFL can be. One day you're a centerpiece. The next, you're being pushed into a different role without anyone really looking at what you can still do. And the wild part is, he said the data showed he was still fast, still physically capable, still able to compete. But once perception shifts, it's hard to change it back. And that's the reality a lot of players face. This isn't just about one player, it's about how time works in this league. And while it brings respect for his career, it also raises important questions about the team today. How is the current roster being managed? How are veterans being treated? How is the transition between generations happening? Because these quiet decisions, they shape locker room culture, and they stay with players. And I'll tell you, this story doesn't show up on a stat sheet, but it impacts way more than people realize. And maybe that's what ties everything together. Roster changes, tough decisions, building for the future, and the emotional cost that comes with it. So take that in, because it leads to a bigger picture about where this team stands right now. And that's what lingers after all of this. This team is at a crossroads. It's not just about signing or not signing. It's not just about making a trade or keeping a player. It's about identity, about what direction this franchise wants to take right now. And that decision is happening in real time. There are players coming in, others possibly leaving, major debates about leadership on the field. And at the same time, stories that remind you how tough this game can be on those who built it. All of it connected, all of it shaping what comes next. In the end, it's not just football, it's direction, it's vision. And now I want to hear from you. What's your take on the Vikings at this moment? Stay tuned. SKOL Vikings, let's go.